All right, everybody, welcome to Sticks and Sips. This is the Drew Estate Virtual Happy Hour. I am your host, Frankie Drinks, and I am so honored to be with you yet again for another amazing episode with you guys out there joining us. Uh, sticking and sipping, as we like to say. So don't forget to check in from your neighborhoods, from wherever you're at, from all parts of the globe, and even you flat earthers who have chapters all over the globe, you know, check in too. We love you as well. So I wanna say, hey, look, we've had a great start to 2021, and this is a monster episode. I couldn't be happier to welcome our guests. I'm gonna show them off to you in a little bit. Uh, like always, I've got to tell you, listen, part of Sticks and Sips is you guys are learning. You guys are getting all these great questions. So submit your questions. Hashtag Ask Frankie Drinks, and get your question. And we pick your question. You guys get a custom Sticks and Sips cutter and the new swag hat that we got, and some other goodies. Maybe Jack will throw in a sticker or two. You know, whatever he finds around the office. Maybe Joey's desk, something like that. He'll ship it out to you. So get those questions going. Like any good happy hour, let's take a look at the menu tonight. So for tonight, our sips are Mezcal Vago, the beautiful spirit from Oaxaca. So excited. I probably should just be at home sipping this by myself, but I've got to be out here with you, and we're going to walk you through it and have a great time. I have two amazing guests. I have Dylan Sloan, co-founder of Mezcal Vago, and Joey Drew, our resident mezcal maniac. Which that will be your moniker tonight, Joey. And
Thank you.
our stick for this perfect pairing is it the Herrera Esteli Habano. Couldn't get any better than that. And then I've got a cocktail called the Oaxaca. So you're like, what the hell is that? Don't worry about it. It's delicious. That's all you got to know. But first, I'm going to check into the Zoom lounge, and first I'm going to say hello to Izzy joining us. Izzy, how are you doing?
Hey Frank, how you doing? Hey Drew Estate peeps.
Listen, everyone's excited that you're on. Thank you for joining us. You know, I know you've got great questions for our guests, and you're gonna have a nice cocktail to share with us in a minute. Uh, so stick around. We're gonna have a lot of fun tonight, and I'm so honored to have you join us.
Thanks for having me again, Frank. I'm excited to be here tonight.
Listen, next up, he's a man that needs no introduction. He's the master blender. So here goes the introduction, Willie. He's a master blender for Drew Estate. Sneak attack, and it's nice and chilly out, in his garage, and he wants to drink some mezcal, learn about mezcal, and he's got some great insight into that beautiful Herrera Esteli Habano. Welcome, Willie Herrera.
Thank you, brother. Glad to be here, man. Excited to get some mezcal knowledge, man. So I'm ready.
I know you've been watching us drink a lot of mezcal over the last couple of years, and you
Oh yeah.
you know kind of give us a little side eye. And so now here's a chance for you to learn a little bit more.
Well,
Get
hey, man.
down that
Like
rabbit hole
Joey
with us.
says, that's it. Like Joey says, I'm going down that rabbit hole, bro.
Well, welcome. We were more than happy to have you join us down here, man. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
I'm
Make
ready.
sure you get like that credit card. You don't have any limits on that. So next up, my man, the Wizard. He's the head of global creative for Drew Estate. He's also our resident Mezcal Minute host. Every week for the last 40 something weeks, he's hosted Mezcal Minute with us. And here he is, Mr. Joey Drew. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I'm freezing my ass off down here in South Florida because it's like 50 degrees outside here in the backyard. But I got the mezcal to warm me
Right
up.
now, everyone in the
I
chat
know.
hates
Boo
you.
hoo. Everybody cry for poor Joey in the freezing 50s. But yeah, no, just chilling out, warming up with some mezcal and enjoying a nice Herrera. So this is what better night could there be than that? And great to see everybody loading in the chat and on Facebook Live. So let's go. Let's go.
Let's go. And listen, last but not least, my very honored guest. I'm so excited today. I'm geeking out, but I'm trying to keep it like real. You know, I got my man Dylan Sloan for Mezcal Vago. Dylan, say hello to everybody.
Yeah, thanks, man. Excited to be here. Excited to learn about cigars. Excited to talk about some great mezcals. We'll be journeying to Oaxaca on the show, but that's not where I'm at. I got about 25 degrees outside my window. So
We'll dream of Oaxaca while we talk
yeah,
about it.
we'll be dreaming. We'll be going there mentally. But yeah, I'm
We'll be
excited.
dreaming about Oaxaca. Well, I hope. Well, thank you very much. So listen, can't have a happy hour without a cocktail special. So my cocktail special for tonight is called the Oaxaca, and I'll explain that to you in a second. But first, I'm going to start with a beautiful Mezcal Vago Espadin. So I'm going to do little 2 ounces. You know, I'm flying without a net here. Usually we do a cool video and I do a little talk over, but hey, today's special. I'm going live without a net. And then what I'm going to do is a little, I like to go about 3/4 ounce of Campari. So what this is the riff somewhere between a margarita
And then
and a Negroni. So people going like, why would he do that? Because I'm Frankie Drinks and I can do what I want. So and I figured these really bring out some nice flavors and that in between that margarita and a Negroni. And then I've got my hibiscus. This is agua de Jamaica, which is a hibiscus syrup. So, Willie, this is hibiscus flowers that they do agua frescas with. And I'm doing a little, about 1/2 ounce in there for that sweetness. So I made a simple syrup by steeping a little sugar water and some dried hibiscus flowers. So now I'm going to give it a little shake. You know, I don't want to make too much noise on the set and frighten everybody. So, but you
I
want
love
to
that
give it,
hibiscus, man. Hibiscus is like so amazing with mezcal.
it is delicious. And anytime you're introducing an acidic component like lime juice, you want to make sure that you get it shaken in it to break it up. And there's a difference. Instead of serving it up, I'm going to serve it over a nice rock. So this is I guess, the love child between a margarita and a Negroni. I thought that it brings out some beautiful flavors. I'm gonna top it with a little hibiscus flower and a little lime wheel. And there is your Waha Mica. So cheers, everybody. So raise your glass, your copitas if you're out there and you're fully prepared, and take a sip with us. And thank you for joining.
Salud.
Salute, man. That is pretty tasty, if I do say so myself. So, so now the moment that I've been waiting for a long time. And this gentleman doesn't really know this, but big fans of the product. Um, Beautiful expressions, um, just amazing flavors that come from it. So I have the distinct honor to introduce the co-founder of Mezcal Vago, Mr. Dylan Sloan. Dylan, welcome.
Thanks, Frankie. I'm happy to be here.
Dude, we are. I'm excited. You know, Joey's excited. I think Willie's excited too. You know, but listen,
A little bit more, but I can sense the enthusiasm.
listen. He's a man of few words, but of great taste. How about that? So listen, Dylan, give us a story of Mezcal Vago, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure, sure, yeah. So it's a company I started with one of my best friends, and we didn't really have great aspirations to start a liquor brand, or we weren't like entrepreneurs looking for the latest business model. We were basically ski bums living in the mountains of Colorado, and we just became really good friends, and we would travel a lot in the off seasons, often longing for warmer environments where our money, could get us further. And so often ended up in Mexico, and got into surfing a little bit. And Judah is my business partner. He went full bore, like fell in love with Mexico and surfing and kind of took off. And just went to live down there indefinitely. And we were in touch, and I'd come down and visit in the off seasons and stuff. But he basically ended up on this surf break on the coast of Oaxaca, and real kind of remote spot. And he was just living out of his tent and surfing every day. And he developed an ear infection. And he went into the little local rural medical clinic and met the nurse and fell in love. And long story short, that's his wife now. They've got a beautiful daughter. But Valentina is the nurse. She was doing her internship. She grew up in the hills of Oaxaca, really in a pretty remote spot, in a really humble environment, dirt floors. She was the first person in her family to ever get an education, to get like a nursing degree. That was a huge deal. And her family's been making mezcal on their family farm for 5 generations. They'd never sold it commercially. It had never really been a bottle. It never had a label. It was just traded locally, as you guys probably know, and we can get into. Mezcal is a huge, culturally relevant to the people of Oaxaca, especially the campesinos who live more in the mountains and outside the hills. And she was just from every little community has 1 or 2 mezcaleros that make mezcal from the local agave plants. And she was from one of those families. And so we just kind of fully fell into this thing, literally married into it. My buddy did. And we decided that we should do something with it. And we fell in love with the spirit and fell in love with the people, and eventually started a brand. And what we did was we just sourced right off the family farm. So originally we just wanted 1 mezcal, and as you guys probably know, or Joey can attribute, like once you get into it, it's like there's so much. It's like you guys sent me a cigar package. I'm like, oh, which were the cigars? Well, there was like 6 different kinds, right? From dried differently, different kinds of tobacco and everything. And so it's exactly the same thing. You just fall in love, and there's so much. So, I mean, I sent you those 4 bottles we'll go through today, but it just keeps unraveling. So we wanted different mezcals from Aquilino, who's Valentina's father. We wanted different mezcals from different producers from different regions. So we sort of copied the model that was going down in Oaxaca, where you just say everything that's in the bottle, like who made it, where it was made, how it was made, right there on the label. And then we now do a different tint for each of our producers. And we source right off the family farms from people who've been doing it for generations. And our whole thing is we're trying to get it right from the farm, bring it up to the consumer in a completely unadulterated way. We're not watering it back. We're not aging it in barrels. We're not telling them to make it in a more modernized way. And then we just try and empower the customer by telling them like how it was made, where it was made, who made it, like what type of plants was in it. And so that's our whole thing, is like we're just taking it from there and bringing it up to you guys in its purest form and just celebrating the history of it.
Well, listen, that I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to go to the very top, the very top of the bottle here. If you look at the name and Willie, Spanish speaker, Frankie drank, Spanish speaker, Mezcal Vago.
Yeah. Usually get some laughs.
listen, you got to, like some people, looking at that, they don't really know what it means, but I think I think it deserves an explanation. And if you don't mind, on Sticks and Sips, we'd like the explanation.
Sure, man. Whatever you guys want to hear. We're an open book. Transparency. That's our big thing. Like just kind of trying to tell you, no smokes and mirrors. But a Vago, it can mean a lot of different things in Spanish. My dad grew up in Mexico City, and when I told him I was going to name our brand Mezcal Vago, he about fell over. Thought it was a horrible idea. But the way, what we're doing is Vago is like a vagabond, like a traveler, a gypsy, like someone is just kind of, they use it almost as a verb, like Alavago, like to go to the beach. Alavago is like, you don't have a a hotel reservation. You don't know where you're staying. You know where you eat. You're just winging it. So when it hitchhikes, kind of, it can mean slow. It can mean lazy. It can mean a vagrant, like a bum in the street. But we kind of like that because we were skiers, but doing like seasonal ski. And people refer to those people as ski bums, right? But that's not in like a negative thing. Yeah, it's got the word bum in it, but a ski bum's like that's actually someone who's got the place dialed and knows what they're doing, right? And so Judah had gone full Vago, like he just went to Mexico. He sold everything he owned. He's just like living out of his truck and surfing every day. Like that's like a Vago, like someone who's just carefree. So it just seemed to fit. It just seemed to fit, and it's 4 letters and easy to say in English, so it's not like something that trips up the white girls in Seattle either. So it just works. So yeah,
He went there. He went there.
That's
Not
awesome.
me, right? But listen. I love it. It's what I call it. It would have been it's so much better than Mezcal Hobo. Mezcal Vago has got a much better ring than that. So
There's a lot more romance in it. Yeah.
all the romance
it
in
works
it.
on a lot of different levels, and
Yeah. I like it. I think I want to be Vago. I mean, everybody aspires to that, right?
exactly.
To just let it all go and throw caution to the wind and just go with it. That's
Absolutely.
beautiful.
In that mentality, and again, Judah's more of the Vago than I am, but we're both, we never were pursuing careers, and we never were, we were both kind of living that life. And if he hadn't gone full Vago, he never would have met Valentina. He would have this never would have come about if he hadn't let go. You got to let go of one thing to find the next. So, yeah, we're Vago through and through. Proud of it.
All right, so Dylan, I'm gonna ask you this question here, right? I'm gonna set you up for this. So your boy goes down to Oaxaca. He's living out of his van, surfing
I'm
all
losing
the.
your volume. I can't hear you for 1 second.
Hang
Can you
on.
guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we can
Yeah.
hear you great. How's
Okay. My volume cut out earlier, and it came back. So I'm just hoping it's going to come back like any second.
Yeah, no, you're good.
right. So
Got it.
all right, fantastic. All right. So so Dylan, I was gonna say your boy Judah moves down to Oaxaca, living out of his van, right? Meets the love of his life after an ear infection, right? And then he says, meets her family, discovers mezcal, and eventually, I guess, gets you on the phone and says,
Come
"We
on
need to do
down."
this."
Yeah. Basically, like, so what happened was he was trying to figure out a way to stay down there, right? So he was planning on living there for like 6 months, about how much money he had, and then all of a sudden he's getting ready to have a family, and asking for this beautiful woman's hand from her father, and he's got to stay, right? So there was no internet in this little town, so we actually started off. We've always had little bit, schemes together. We've always been like had ideas of like different business ideas, and it's just been buddies and done fun stuff together and stuff. But there was no internet, so he's like, man, if we just buy like 6 computers, we'll rent this place, we'll bring in internet, and you'll always have it whenever you come down. You can just crash. You'll be like co-owner of this internet cafe. I had already visited the town a couple of times. And so that's kind of how we started. We bought like 6 like shitty computers and brought in internet. But you charge like 10 pesos an hour for internet. But what happened was he was cooking like good food, and all the surf bums and stuff started. International travelers started coming around, and he had this like 5-gallon jug of mezcal that his new soon-to-be father-in-law had given him when he kind of approved of the relationship. And so he started selling the mezcal and beers and stuff out of the internet cafe. And that's when like the real idea clicked, because all the travelers were like, oh man, we're in like the real Mexico now, man. We're on like the hidden surf break, and we're drinking mezcal out of a gasoline can that, this guy's girlfriend's dad makes up in the hills. Like, this is it, right? Like, this is this is the real Mexico. And then the Mexican tourists that were coming down from Oaxaca City or Mexico City, they were like giving big props, being like, oh man, like this isn't just any mezcal, like this is like really good mezcal. And just seeing everyone light up, not literally and figuratively, like from the mezcal is like, that was when like, man, we're onto something. Like this could be the real deal here. And then that was the real inspiration. But yeah, he called me because he was in a bind, man. And I like crazy ideas. So yeah.
I wish I had a friend in Oaxaca calling me up in a bind right now.
Yeah, listen,
Like,
right.
All my buddies were like, you guys, I was like, Judah, you're gonna bail out Judah? Like the guy, like, because he's kind of notorious for just like
Disappearing.
He's going till he was down to his last dime and always needing a hand to get kind of back. I mean, he's always hard working and everything, but he ran it till it was on empty. It was kind of notorious with me and my friends, and they were like, "You're really gonna go down and bail his ass out?" And I'm like, "Fuck yeah, this is gonna be great." And
there you go. By the way, how many minutes in are we in? 24 minutes. We get the first curse word. Thank you, Dylan.
Thank you.
No,
Thank
absolutely
you.
not.
No, it's
Absolutely.
perfect.
We
No.
celebrate it on Sticks and Sips.
Okay.
Fuck
And
yeah.
it means more when it comes naturally. And I thank you for that. But that's it, man. That says a lot about you, Dylan. Your buddy calls you and says, come down and do this, and here we are.
Yeah.
Here we are with your beautiful products, and I want to talk now about the products. By the way, guys, listen, you can order these online. These are copitas, they're little clay. They're essentially about 1 ounce. This is one of the many ways you can enjoy mezcal. A copita, you can have it in a veladora, which is a little like a candle holder, or you could have it in like a little husk. There you go, veladora, beautiful. And or there you go, Izzy, hold yours up, so you can have it in a little gourd as well. Many ways to enjoy yours. The only thing I will say is, if you're enjoying it in a copita, pay attention to the instructions. Soak it in water first, because I poured some mezcal in this. These are brand new, and it stole my mezcal. So
It's like a cast iron pan.
I'm not gonna say I'm not gonna say the motherfucker word, but it's like, damn, man, it's like I poured this pre-show, I forgot I didn't freaking soak them, so it stole my precious mezcal. So Dylan, we're starting with the Espadín. Kind of walk us through what the Espadín is. I think it's the most common of varietals, but tell us more about it.
Basically, mezcal you can make from any kind of agave plant, and there's lots of them. There's literally hundreds, but there's 20 to 30 that you kind of could be used to make a typical mezcal. Just to give that some relevance, tequila is made specifically from Blue Weber agave. That's a specific kind. Mezcal, you can make it from any kind. So it's this huge broad category, but the reality is the majority of agave is Espadín. And the reason behind that is it's the easiest to cultivate. It has the highest yields. It has the highest sugar levels. And it's also genetically the closest to Blue Weber agave, which leads into some other reasons why people might cultivate that. But so it's the most common, but there's nothing subpar about it. You make absolutely beautiful mezcal out of Espadín. I think it was 85% of mezcal that was exported from Oaxaca in 2019 was from Espadín. Anytime you see a bottle of mezcal that doesn't even mention the agave type, you can pretty much assume it's from Espadín. So it's just the daily driver. And because of that, so all those mezcals right there on that shelf and everything that we do is made in super artisanal ways. It's handmade. It's made on these small family farms. It's small batch, artisanal, whatever, however you want to describe that process. But the price varies drastically on those, and the difference is just the raw resource. So Espadín, because it's more widely available, is always going to be the least expensive on any given brand's line. So our Espadin is our least expensive. So it's most often going to be used in a, if you're going to use one of them for a cocktail, you're probably going to use the Espadin just because you're watching your wallet, really. And it works great. They pop great. But that Espadins are also fully connoisseur mezcals that can be sipped. But it's most appropriate for a cocktail because of the price point and also because of the brightness and complexity of the spirit.
Well, I'm thoroughly enjoying it. So beautiful. It's bright. It has, it has all the notes that you want a mezcal to have. A rich savoriness on the back end of the palate, bright fruitiness on the front. The aroma's absolutely beautiful. And I love Espadines. Now, I've got to re-pour myself an elote, and this is like a super cool product for all you mezcal heads out there. This is a really neat process that I'm gonna let Dylan talk about. Tell me about the elote. And by the way, elote means
corn, right? One of the many words for corn. In Mexico, it usually refers to like the corn on the cob they sell in the street with like butter and spices and mayonnaise and stuff on it. But yeah, so the elote. So for just to backtrack 1 second, you'll notice they're all different colors. We work with 4 different producers. So we don't. It's not all just my business partner's family anymore. We're working with 4 different families. The Espadin that you poured is from Joel Barriga, and he's actually a cousin of that same family who lives only about 45 minutes away from Yegalé, where the majority of our mezcal is made. And then the elote is the original color. It's just an undyed. By the way, all our labels are made from the bagasso, the leftover agave fiber, left over from the process at the end after you crush the agave, then you ferment it and you distill it. After it's distilled, you basically toss the fibers. We then grab that fibers, truck it down to Oaxaca City. We work with the school paper maker who makes our labels out of that paper. So we're recycling the product, and it gives it a cool rustic feel. If you can't really quite tell on this.
No, you can totally feel it when you hold it in your hand. You just know it's like
fibrous feel. And
yeah, it's excellent stuff.
To me, that feels like mezcal and Oaxaca. But anyway, so then the elote, that lightest label, that's what we use for Valentina's family. Previously her father and now her brothers. That is elote's kind of our signature mezcal. It's a recipe that Aquilino came up with. Aquilino is Valentina's father, who's also on my hat, who unfortunately passed away. So we'll give our respects to him, but this is his brainchild. This is his recipe. It's common in the mezcal world to take an Espadin and sort of give it a little twist, a little personal touch, a little infusion. A lot of people make mezcal in Oaxaca. If you live in one of these towns and the whole town's going to come over for a wedding or a baptism or a quinceaños, and everyone's had your mezcal before, you want to put a little special out for that party, right? And so what's common is people will do something different to a batch of Espadin during the final distillation. And those are sometimes known as a pechuga, which is basically means like a chicken breast, because sometimes people would hang a chicken in the still, or they put herbs and spices or fruit. And anyway, Aquilino played with all these different recipes, and his favorite one was when he would he's a corn farmer, everyone farms corn, in these communities, and he would take the corn, he would dry it on the roof, he would toast it on the comal where they make their tortillas every morning, and then put it in the mezcal after it had been distilled. And so because you're putting it in something that's been distilled, that corn sugar never ferments or turns into alcohol. It's just a flavor infusion. And then you distill it again, and what's left is just this really subtle corn flavor, Mesoamerican indigenous corn. It adds a touch of sweetness, touch of corn flavor, a little bit of viscosity. And that's his celebration mezcal. We've actually never seen it available commercially on any other level. And it's great because corn's not expensive in rural Mexico, so we can offer it at a price where it's just $1 or $2 more than the Espadín. So you can still use it in cocktail format. It's a great crossover for whiskey drinkers who are used to corn element, in their bourbon, for example. Great in cocktails, and it's something that a lot of agave people haven't had. So that was a real that was a way for us to get a little foothold in the mezcal community. Joey might know because he's been drinking mezcal for a long time. But sometimes when you say Vago, people think, oh yeah, they're the ones with the elote, right? Like that was how we got our foot in the door. We're like, yeah, it's good, right? So check out our Mexicano, check out our, all our other mezcals we had in the bag. So yeah, that's our Celebration Mezcal, unique to our brand, and it's our most popular commercially.
Yeah, I think that was like one of the first ones that we had, Frankie, when we started really going hard on mezcal. It was definitely the Espadín and the elote were the first two right out the gate that we were hitting, and the elote that bottle always went quicker.
Yeah. I would say that Willie, what are you sipping, Willie?
When I switched over to the elote, I started off with the Espadín, and now the elote. Liking it, man.
What do you
Very
think?
different.
It's different, right? The base is the same, but can you taste it? So from when I used to first try it, so now when I taste it, I can just immediately taste the corn. But when I first tried it, when Aquilino was showing me, I could tell it was a little sweeter, but I actually couldn't even pinpoint the corn. It took me a while. So we're careful the way we talk about it, because it's not like some gimmicky like corn flavored mezcal. It's a real subtle thing.
Yeah,
it is very subtle, and it is sweeter. And to me, it has a little bit less of a bite than the Espadín had.
Right, and they're very similar in proof.
You guys, my
Willie.
sound just went out again.
Well, listen.
Give me 1 second. It's been coming back pretty quick.
All right. So I hope you can hear me. All right.
Good.
So Willie, I was gonna say, it just feels a little creamier, almost the same proof in these two bottles. It's beautiful. Now I'm gonna do the Emigdio Jarquín Madre Quiche, but Joey's got the Emigdio Espadín.
Okay. Awesome.
So right, Joey, is that the one that you had,
Yep.
the Espadín?
Yeah, I got the Espadín.
So I'm going to talk about the Madre Quiche. Listen, right off the bat, it's got all the aroma notes that I love. A little bit of funk, a little bit of sweetness, a little bit of that. So you guys grew up in in the 70s.
Juicy fruit, baby.
Juicy fruit, man. Juicy fruit. When you want to know juicy fruit gum, right? What was that mystery flavor that you couldn't figure out? It was passion fruit, but we were duped for all those years. Juicy fruit and zebra stripe gum, and those are those beautiful odors that I love picking up off of mezcal. So, Dylan, tell us about the Madre Quiche.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely love that mezcal. So that's our third producer. Well, whatever order you want to put them in, but he's our producer. He lives in a town called Miahuatlan, which is a big town. Oaxaca City is the biggest city in Oaxaca. The second biggest is Miahuatlan. He doesn't live in the city. He lives on the outskirts, but it's a big, broad, fertile valley. It's absolutely famous for mezcal. There's just tons of excellent mezcal coming out of that region. It's super coveted by Oaxacans in general. I've noticed, like, we sell our mezcals in Oaxaca City, and a lot of the locals gravitate towards Emigdio's mezcals. There's some unique things going on there. His water source, and also the winds blow over from the coast there. You're basically the way Oaxaca is shaped, it's a little funny, but you're basically east of the coast there, and so the predominant winds blow all this ocean air over. So you get a lot of salinity in the mezcals there. So one thing to know, again, just Mezcal 101, all our mezcals, it's not a requirement, are wild fermented. So the yeast that's in the air is what ferments the sugar that turns it into alcohol. Where most more industrial alcohol, you're adding a specific kind of yeast to get a certain flavor profile. Well, this is just happening naturally, right? So the yeasts are very different from community to community. They really give it a huge sense of place from where they're from. So the yeast in Miawalan is very distinct, and it has that funkiness that you're talking about, right? Like we were talking about it earlier, like there's kind of this blue cheese, this almost this sourness, this kind of nutty tahini kind of thing. It's a lot of that comes from the yeast. And then you have the salinity from the air and the minerality from the water that makes it extremely complex. They're rich in general. Like I would describe Aquilino and Joel Barriga's mezcals as more bright. I heard you say that earlier, Frankie. It's like spot on. They're bright. They're complex. There's a lot going on, but they're not rich and funky. They're not weird. They're kind of clean. But when you go to Amigdio's, they're not really clean. They're more funky and have like a little more texture. And then Madre Quiche is a plant that thrives in that area. So like drinking a Madre Quiche from Miawalan is kind of like drinking a Pinot Noir from Burgundy. It's like, it's what they're good at. It's what they know. It's what their family's been working with for generations. It's a Karwinski is like the Latin name for that type of agave, and there's a lot of subvarietals within that. But in the big picture, instead of it being like a big round, like classic agave that you guys have probably all seen pictures of in one form or another, it's more tall and elongated. Exactly. It's more like a tree trunk, and they use that whole body of that plant to make the mezcal. And those mezcals tend to be kind of drier and almost a little woody because there's just more outer bark and sort of outer shell compared to how much sort of inner high sugar content flesh. So if you think about like the flesh to the skin ratio, there's more flesh in a Espadín or a Blue Weber Agave or a Mexicano than there would be in a Karwinski. So yeah, so they kind of have that dry woodiness, but his mezcals I would describe as the opposite of dry. So then it's like this great yin yang thing you got going there, and that's why it's such a well balanced mezcal.
Well, for right now, you know, because it's like your children, right? You don't pick one. You know, you love them all. You know, but I'm loving the Madre Quiche. I love those. And then the last one I'm sipping on is the Ensemble in Barro.
Yeah.
And I want you to tell us, like, there's 4 different agaves in this. Mexicano, the Espadín, the Coyote, and the Arroqueño that are in this, and what makes this different. And by the way, I'm sipping it and loving it.
Awesome. Yeah, so I mean, so these are made by a guy named Tio Ray, we call him affectionately, Solomon Ray Rodriguez. He's doing some really cool stuff. So these mezcals are considered ancestral. Technically, they actually have delineations of artisanal versus ancestral. But a couple of things he's doing that are really cool. One, he's hand mashing the agaves. So no matter what, you cook agave plant, you got to sort of shred it basically in one form or another to get all the sugar so you can access that sugar. Well, like in a tequila factory, they use a shredder basically, or some mezcal companies. And then what's most common with artisanal mezcal is you use a tahona, which is, you guys have probably seen it before. It's a big round, like Flintstones looking.
It's massive.
Yeah,
It's massive. Yeah.
Massive, right? Like 4 or 5 feet tall, cement, rock wheel that's towed behind a burro or a couple cows or whatever, whoever's going to tow it. And that smashes the agave, and you kind of rake it out and smash it over and over again. Well, Tio Ray is literally smashing his agaves with wooden mallets in like these wooden canoas, they call them, like a canoe. You just put the cooked agave in there and you just start beating it down. So it's super labor intensive. How that affects the flavor, we'll leave it up to the judge, but there's something super cool about it. And And then when he goes to distill, all the other mezcals you've been tasting, they're distilled in copper, like alembic style stills. But Tio Ray's using clay pots to distill. It's a super ancient way to make alcohol. You basically just fill a clay pot with your mash. You build a fire around it. It starts to steam. On top of that clay pot is another clay pot that has a hole in the bottom so the steam can go from one to the other. And at the top of that, there's a cooling element. So Tio Ray uses these little metal tins. And there's water is recirculating and cooling that tin. So when the steam comes from one clay pot to the next, sort of swirling around those clay pots, it then hits the cool tin and recondenses and drips down into an agave leaf that catches the mezcal, runs out a little reed. That's your alcohol. It's ancient. It dates back to before the Spanish ever showed up in Mesoamerica. It's inefficient, but it makes just incredibly unique alcohol. When you taste it, it has this earthiness, this rustic earthiness that is incomparable to anything else. He distills right to proof. So the more efficient your technique, the higher proof it comes out. And then you got to figure out a way with either the tail end of the distillate or water or whatever it might be to bring it back down. Well, he's not doing that. He's distilling. He's just stirring it up, basically. And because of that, it has this really thick viscosity. There's a lot of mouthfeel. There's a lot of texture to it. So he's just an incredible way to make mezcal. And then, sorry, Tio Ray, was just so much to talk about. But like you said, there's 4 different mezcals in that kind. Well, I got a different one. Actually, no, I got the same one. But the point is he grows all these different agave types, and whatever's ripe and he thinks will go well together, he harvests, throws it in the pit together. They roast it. We weigh it so we know the proportions. Like this is 35% Mexicano, 33% Espadín, 24% Coyote, 8% Araqueño. We get that from the dry weight. He cooks it together, crushes it together, ferments it together, distills it together. But the point is that ratio, that's just what he had around.
It changed the next year.
The next batch is totally different. So each one is like this one-off, right? So it's a cool SKU. We call it ensemble and borrow. Ensembles, an ensemble, a blend, a mix, and then in borrow means in clay. And this is one I thought, when we first talked about pairing mezcal and cigars, I was like, oh yeah, we gotta do like Tio Ray, right? Because it's just got this barnyard funkiness, earthiness, like it kind of feels like you're looking at red rock or something.
Yeah, I love that. That's what I love a lot about mezcal in general is like when you can taste that minerality and you can pick out where it's from based on that even. That's the magical part.
Like we've done pairing dinners and we pair it with like the roasted meat, the real heavy course, right? Like it's chunky, it's meaty, it's hearty.
It's so beautiful to get people to understand that mezcal isn't just necessarily like one thing. It isn't a one-trick pony. It's very complex, and much like cigars, even in this case, Willie Herrera Esteli, every single Herrera Esteli is different in its nature. And I'm going to throw this over to you guys without going to the official crossover. Joey and Willie and Izzy, we said, look, I think the Habano is kind of a great pairing, but we're really starting probably between the Espadín and the Elote first, is where the mindset was at, and Willie, now that you've had a little bit of the Mezcal Vago, like what are your sensibilities about the Habano?
Dude, I just love how, because the Habano is, it's a medium body smoke. It's not a lot of heavy tobaccos in there. It's all Nicaraguan tobaccos. But for me, the elote really brings out more of that nuttiness and that creaminess. It just blends together so well. you with that spirit. The espadín, the yellow one, the first one that I had a little bit more bite to me. This one was a little bit sweeter, which brought out then some of the sweetness out of the habano. And just I don't know, man, it just went well. I haven't gone into the blue one yet. That one's next. And unfortunately, like I said, I don't have the red one. But I'm anxious to try out the blue one and see. But so far, man, the elote it's fantastic.
We could kind of take a look, Dylan, as we're looking at the at how each of these being very very similar but yet different. When we get to the Madre, you're getting into some like a different space. And Joey, I'm thinking of Miami on the Madre because it's funky,
Yeah.
it's viscous, it's got this explosion of flavors around it that are like kind of on another level. And our Miami blend is kind of something a little bit different, which
Yeah. I
is
mean, yeah.
totally fine.
Yeah. I mean, I generally, the funkier the mezcal, or in some cases, Raicilla even, I go darker. I go a more oscuro wrapper or even a broadleaf. And that really complements it. It's kind of like chocolate and fruit together. But the reason for Habano with Espadin, forward stuff, it just seemed to be like that spice component just works so well with Espadin. It's been one of my favorites for years. Even Underground Sungrown is in the same space. It just works really well. It's a class, you're talking about a classic style cigar. You're talking about Herrera Habano. That's a classic style cigar. It's what you think of when you think of a cigar before you ever had one. That's what you think a cigar should be, and it is. And it goes so perfectly with a mezcal, which is just so pure and simple, and they work well together. The other part that's really great about the Espadin is the fact that from producer to producer, village to village, using the same material, it could all taste so very different from one another. And it's similar to cigars in a way where, look, you go to Esteli, a lot of factories, a lot of our friends that are making cigars, we're all using very similar components, but yet we come out with such very unique and interesting products from one another using very similar material. And that's the magic of mezcal, and that's how they kind of match each other. The storylines match of how they're produced, and that cultural relevance for the communities that make them. So it's a beautiful story.
Well, Joey, also not only does it change from producer to producer in how the tobacco is blended and incorporated with other tobaccos in whatever blend it is that they're making, but as far as you could have the same seed type and you have three different farms from the same farmer, and all three taste very different, and that's the beauty of tobacco. It's the beauty of the mezcal. It's, you go from one area to another area, and not only is it blended differently, but each plant, based off of where it's grown, it's going to taste totally different.
you know uh what Willie you're referring to is really the terroir of a region. And when we're talking about tobacco, I believe that mezcal has that unique um ability to speak about terroir. The terroir speaks through the spirit. The terroir of the cigars um speak through the final product. But there's so many steps in the in between, right? uh it's how we it's how we dry the leaf, how we ferment the leaf, how we age the leaf, and how we reconstitute the leaf, how we roll it, what the blend is like. And then the same thing with mezcal, right? It's where we from after we harvest it, how long how long did we take from the point that we harvested that plant and roasted it? And did we let it rest 3 days or 5 days? Did we put it in the tina? Did we let it ferment 5 days, 7 days, 8 days, 9 days?
Yeah.
Where was it fermented? So there's so many similarities along the way, and everyone has their own distinct maker has their way, which is why I believe, to me, I have a love affair with mezcal. and with cigars, because I think it's phenomenal, and I want everybody out there to join us. So I know there's a lot of questions out there. So again, ask Frankie Drinks, or you can ask Dylan Drinks, or Izzy Drinks, or Willie Drinks, or Joey Drinks. Get your questions in. We're getting to that point where we're getting close to the question. You know, listen, this episode, I'm not gonna do a mezcal minute, but if I did, Joey, let's do a mezcal minute with Joey.
All right. So obviously drinking the Mezcal Vago Espadín, and this is literally, this is an Espadín as long as the other ones you have there. They've been in my rotation from the beginning. It's a constant, source on my shelf of other mezcals that I got, and I just love it. It's one of the, you find brands that you just know. You look at that bottle, you've had it before, and you're like, I know what I'm getting. I know it's good. And then to hear Dylan speak about his story of the brand and everything else, that just even reinforces it even more. You fall more in love with it, and that's the cool part. So I made a cocktail with it tonight. I made a thing called a boozy little thing called Love, which I've been sipping on tonight with that. And yeah, just a little agave syrup, a little lemon, and a little of this stuff here, the Ancho Reyes Verde, which gives it a little nice little spicy green pepper note, and super delicious. Highly recommend it. I could drink too many of them.
Hey, Frank, could I ask a question for Dylan?
No, it's all right. So we'll move on.
You don't get anything for free though.
Go ahead, Willie.
Hey,
Go
Dylan,
ahead, Willie.
so you were saying earlier, on the fermentation process, how you rely, on the yeast just from the air, right?
And
So how does that vary from year to year? In that fermentation process, you're like maybe not getting enough in order for it to ferment, or like what happens? That's something similar to that happens with us if it's too humid in Nicaragua when it comes to the fermentation of the tobacco, and then we got to do things to get that heat up to be able to ferment that tobacco on those pilons. But how do you guys do?
Well, I haven't seen a lot of variation from year to year, but we do have kind of what you're talking about. I think too is there are some issues with seasons, right? So the yeast behave differently in different seasons. So in the hottest time of the year, which is really the best time to make mezcal, we get a really fast ferment. Whereas in the colder seasons, it might not ferment as fast, and you'll get a slower ferment. And some people might even prefer that. Our maestros, not so much. They prefer a faster ferment. You get a higher yield, and the mezcals are generally a little better. So things they might do is like not make mezcal. If it's going to be really cold, especially in Michoacan or Esteli Habano, where it's a little cooler. But also it's interesting. So I was saying before, Madre Quiche has less sugar in it. But if it's a colder time of year, you might throw a little Espadín in to increase the sugar content because it's colder and you need to help the yeast. So it's cool to watch them do this sort of song and dance with the elements and the climate and the time of year and the type of plant and how mature the plant is. And that's where you see that and there's no book, man. There's no recipe. And you're like, well, why are you doing that? And it's just that's the generational knowledge that's being handed down within that family. And literally the guy across the street might be doing it differently.
Right.
And that's what makes it so interesting.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And then that's why, because from bottle to bottle, sometimes, or year to year, I'm buying this Espadín that I had a year or two ago, and now, wow, this one's a bit different. It's a subtle difference. It's not dramatic, like, oh my God, but it's enough where you're like, wow, that's so interesting and unique. And that's what makes you keep coming back to taste those differences over time. And again, with the fermentation part, that's the part what really, I'm so happy you brought that up, because that was when we had Lola Noguera on a couple months ago talking about that. And it was talking about hey, around this area where they're growing the plants and stuff, and and distilling. There's a certain group of trees or fruit plants that are growing that flower at a certain time of year, and that influences that batch at that time of year compared to another time of year. So that's the fun part of, that's the rabbit hole. That's when you're really going down.
And then they're like, oh yeah, we want to replace the roof, and you're like, what? Wait, oh, like,
Like, no, you're gonna change it.
like you just don't want to change anything, right? Like, and I don't know, but that's what makes it interesting. So yeah. So down in Nicaragua, are they? Is it just naturally fermenting? You guys are just leaving it out, or are you
Well, how we ferment the tobacco, it's the old school way, very similar to how you guys do it. We do nothing but pressure and water. So we build these big, massive, call it like a big block, right? It's about, I don't know, 15 foot long, about 4 or 5 foot high, by like another maybe 5 or 6 foot wide. And it's nothing but tobacco that gets placed in rows in top of each other. And then all that tobacco's wet, and then they cover it. So then that pressure and the water starts building up heat, and it starts basically cooking that tobacco from the bottom up, and it starts fermenting and breaking down that tobacco. And then, depending on the season, if it's cooler, if it's rainier, if it's more humid or not, or whatever, they got to break down that thing sometimes twice a week, or sometimes 3 times a week. It all depends on the weather. And so they break it down. The bottom goes to the top goes to the bottom, the inside goes to the outside goes back to the inside. And that goes on and on and on. Sometimes, depending what the tobacco is. So if we're talking about like broadleaf, that might go on for 18 months, 19 months, 22 months. Other tobacco, I mean, we've had tobaccos in fermentation for 3 years. Now think about that, man. 3 years of breaking down, building back up, breaking down, building back up 3 times a week. Oh, it's crazy, man. But you're relying on the weather, and you're relying on how quickly that heat goes up. And every tobacco has a certain number where that heat can pass, or you just destroyed all tobacco, like happened to us early on. We weren't too familiar with a certain type of tobacco back then, and we destroyed 250 grand worth of tobacco just like that. Just cooked it and was no good for anything. So you learn.
So here's
quick.
a lesson, Dylan. Don't overcook that agave, especially when it's worth $250,000.
Wow, that's a big one. That's wow. That's
We learned our lesson, man.
Yeah, that's in everything. Think about the mezcaleros, working in their palenque. They've learned generation and generation what has worked and what has not worked, and that's passed down. Hey, don't do that. And you learn like, oh, well, why don't you do that? Well, if you want to lose all the money you just had, well, you can do that.
Yeah. Dylan, and what's the growing for an agave plant? How long does it take for it to mature for you to be able to use it?
By the way, Willie, that is a great question. I would love to send you one of these.
You got my address, bro.
But
hashtag ask Frankie or whatever it was.
but you should have gotten in line with the ask Frankie Drinks. Thank you, Dylan. I appreciate it. But no, that is a great question, Dylan. Let's start with Espadín. What's the age of Espadín about the time that it's ready to harvest?
So yeah, like the bare minimum is 6 years. You generally say 6 to 8 years, but honestly, depending on the environment, you could easily go to 10. So basically, it's a plant that, so it takes a really long time, right? So
that's the quickest one.
Yeah, these plants have a lot of pent up energy to express. They've spent all that time. Talk about terroir, right? Like with grapes, you talk about like that year. Well, with agave, you're talking about like that decade. And once it's mature, that's when a plant's getting ready to mature. At the end of its life cycle, it shoots up the quiote, which is like the flower stalk. What a maestro would do is he'll cut that down and then leave it in the field for another couple months, and it basically starts to die, and all the sugar goes back into the piña. That's where you're gonna get the highest yield and the best mezcal. Now that's an ideal situation. People don't generally, now that the mezcal rush is on and people are cutting corners, that's not always done, but that ideally, yeah. So Espadin, 6 to 8 years. Madre Quiche, 10 to 15.
Oh,
And then let's
wow.
see, in this one, Coyote and Mexicano are similar to Espadin, but Arroqueño can take even longer, 12 to 15. And then
Wow.
there's plants like Tepestate that can take 25 years to mature.
Jeez. Damn.
And so it's insane. And they're just surviving out there in the harshest environments often. Just on the side of these hillsides, growing out of some rock. It hasn't rained and who knows how long. And they're just surviving. It's
So these farmers that are growing these agaves fields, right? It's not like tobacco that they'll fertilize it or they'll put nutrients into the ground, then they water it or put little water spigots along in rows or whatnot. It's just out in the wild.
generally it depends. So when agave is cultivated, you generally get it going somewhere where you have a water source until it's 1 or 2 years old. And then you plant it in the rainy season where it's going to rain it in and it'll get, but often like the majority of the time, you're planting it in fields or on hillsides where there is no water source. So then once it's rained in off that first season, it's pretty much on its own. Now, if you want the plants to do really well and mature fast and get good harvest, you will go in and like cut all the grass out, just so the plant has the best chance it has. But that's about it. Some people use fertilizer down in the more like industrial flatlands, but none of our guys do. They're out in the hills, and we don't.
So
Yeah, I mean,
cool.
to put it into perspective too, think about, a lot of guys, that watch us, they drink bourbons and scotches and stuff. And so the grains are grown year over year over year. And all the time is then spent in a barrel. But with mezcal, it's completely the opposite. The time is in the roots.
Yeah.
It's completely the opposite. And that's the best, that's the way I like to enjoy it, is that plant has been in their roots for 10, 15, 20 years. Then you distill it and then you can drink it right away then. Whereas for a producer of like bourbons and whiskeys and stuff, man, you're distilling something that you're not going to be able to really taste the fruits of for another 10 or 15 years because it's been sitting in a barrel. So it's just flipping the script on that.
So Dylan, I have a question. I'm drinking the Mexicano and I've tried it in bourbon. So at first when I sipped this earlier today, it was pepper notes, but now I'm getting stone fruit. I'm getting the baking spices of bourbon. Is that just my palate because I drink more bourbon? So what's happening with this one?
You got a good palate, Izzy. I
He does.
always say winter spices when like you said, baking spices when I describe the Mexicano. No, I don't think it's because you're a bourbon drinker. I think that's just because you have a good palate and you pick up on it. The Mexicano, which is one of my favorites. It's a beautiful bottle you got right there. It's delicate, it's elegant, and it has this touch of sweetness and the flavors you described. That's the plant. That's that type of agave, that particular agave. Those are the flavors that people pick up on off that particular species. So yeah.
It completely changed. Like at first I was like, oh, it's paper. I'm like, no, this is luscious. It's like stone fruit and just, baking spices.
Yeah, when we've done tasting dinners, I like to pair that with the dessert course. It goes really well with chocolate. Goes really well with like coffee. Anything really sweet. Yeah.
Hey, Frank, you need to get the questions because we're asking them all.
All right. No, hey, I'm digging it, man, because these are all questions that I would have asked, and the only thing I will add to that is, hey, Willie, imagine you harvesting a tobacco that you can't roll for another 25 years.
Oh, that's insane, man. That's insane.
So these are kind of the beauties of mezcal. So I'm gonna get to the Ask Frankie Drinks portion. You guys have been amazing. So I'm gonna put this out there. Brian Mayer, any warm cocktails made with mezcal? It's gonna be cold in Chi Town, and the answer is No, Brian, sip your mezcal neat, but if you have to have a cocktail, have the one that I made with a little espadine. But if you really wanted something warm, a really nice tea with a little 2 ounce pour of the espadine might bring out some of those beautiful flavors you want to enjoy in the cold Chi-town weather. But listen, I've got my man Dylan sitting in 25 below zero over there in Colorado. Dylan, you got any warm mezcal cocktail suggestions?
You know, yeah, you could do it. You could do some warm cocktails like a toddy, like with the elote. Just with a little chamomile tea and honey, all hot in there would be awesome.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I did a ginger honey one the other night. It was amazing.
yeah, throw a couple cloves and like a little lemon wedge and
Mm.
a big squeeze of lemon, or what's nice is like a squeeze of orange and like a hot toddy, but use orange instead of lemon. I did those on Thanksgiving, was really nice. So yeah,
Beautiful. There
you
you
got
go, Brian. You've got a world of choices already waiting for you in the frozen tundra of Chicago. And call up Benny's because they have a great selection of mezcal, and they definitely have Mezcal Vago. So thank you, Brian. Great question. Next up, Kenneth Londrigan. Congratulations! You're gonna get a hat and a cutter and some cool stuff. Um, He's asking everybody, I guess, for someone like me looking to try Vago Mezcal or any Mezcal for that matter for the first time, what bottle would you try first? Listen, Dylan, they want to try Mezcal Vago for the first time. They're getting into the Mezcal world, so don't hit them, Hammer. Where do they go?
if they're whiskey drinkers at all, if that's I would go to the elote. It's just, I mean, Willie like hadn't had a whole lot of mezcal. He was immediately gravitated towards that. Um, it's the gateway mezcal, I used to call it. Um, it has a little bit of that sweetness and corn that makes it just a little bit more approachable. It's really well made. It's high quality. I think it's great. You could use it in cocktails, but it's definitely a sipper. That would be my go-to.
There you go, Kenneth. From the horse's mouth, you got it right there. First time, and it's a great choice. I'm working on my second sip
It's a
already.
crowd pleaser. So yeah, that's your one.
It is. It is. We don't like to use the words gateway for anything. But, but if we did,
Well, so
this
far,
this would be it, right? So Willie, what would be the gateway Herrera?
Dude, I'm gonna have to go with that elote, man.
I like it. I like it. But which cigar, man? Are we going with a Brazilian?
Oh,
We're going with a
Habano, Habano,
Oh,
Habano.
Habano all the
Oh
way,
yeah,
man.
oh
So
yeah,
so
for sure.
so if people were Willie, if people were trying their first, they're kind of like if we were gonna say, I'm gonna get into the cigar world, I want to try something that's not gonna kill me, but it's got full of flavor. The Habano, right?
100%, man. That's right in the middle. It's a cigar that the novice could handle. It's gonna give them everything they're looking for without, without punching them in the face. It's gonna give them all the flavor. It's gonna give them all the nuances of a traditional cigar. Great tobacco, well made. Because some of the other ones might be a little bit stronger, a little bit more peppery, a little bit more spice. And if they're new to the cigar world, the Habano is definitely a gateway, man. That's I said the gateway. Sorry, I take it back. It's definitely there should be their first. Let's say
Yeah.
their
Much better.
introduction.
Yes, there we go. Yeah, it's the beginning of the rabbit hole, right?
Now,
You know?
I do gotta say, man, now the blue one, the Espadin blue
No,
label
did you
one
have
that
the
you had
Espadin blue,
there.
or did you have?
Yes.
Yeah. He has the
Uh,
same one I have.
Okay, you've got the same one, so it's a little different, right?
But it's really good too, man. I mean, it's right up there with the elote, man. I mean, it's hard for me to say now.
Listen,
It's hooked. It's hooked.
Emigdio is doing his job, man. You know, I
Yeah, man. I'm
prop.
going on the
Listen,
second pour now.
yeah, listen, little props for Emigdio. But on that, thank you, Dylan and Willie, for giving us the idea of how to really get started. And Dylan, you've got some stuff over there. Um, you know, get get that habano in there. Get that flavor. Um, smell the foot, get all those flavors that are in there. You want to smell the end of that cigar, so you've got that beauty of all those flavors from the wrapper, binder, and filler. You want to smell the very end of that cigar. Take a deep breath in, the same way that when we take a breath when we're taking a thing, you want your mouth a little bit open. You want a lot of oxygen flowing through there. Same concept. Just get that in your palate, and then take a little sip. Um, it is a beautiful, beautiful combination. Mike Sierra, what do you like about the Herrera Esteli Habano that sets it apart from other Habanos? Man, that's that I'm gonna throw that to Izzy because that's a hard one, but I'm gonna reserve my comments till the very, very end. And Willie, you can't comment on this. This is your blend, bro.
It's not a hard question. The Habano is just that. It's that perfect cigar. If you are a first time smoker, it's not going to overpower you. If you are a seasoned smoker, you're going to enjoy it. The notes in this cigar is beautiful. It has just a little salinity. It has a little spice. It's mild but yet medium. It's the go-to cigar. I can have this cigar in the morning. I can finish my night with this cigar. It's truly the perfect cigar. And I think most of us in the company, this is our go-to cigar. So yeah, you can't go wrong with the Habano.
Absolutely. And listen, not to reveal the preview, because we're gonna have our big ladies of the Liga, which we do celebrate the ladies of Drew Estate. But when we pulled them, Willie, you know, don't tell Giselle. All the ladies
I'll keep
love.
it in the DL, bro.
Right. Make sure she's not tuning in tonight. Uh, you know, uh, all the ladies, the majority, as much as we produce some beautiful cigars and some beautiful brands, they love that Herrera Esteli Habano.
We love
Man,
it.
they
You know,
love it.
Frank, it's like I say, man. It's the perfect anytime cigar, man. You can have it like as he said. You can have it in the morning. You can have it at night. You can have it after a heavy meal. It's gonna give you what you want. It's gonna give you the flavor. It's gonna give you the complexity. It's gonna give you everything you're looking for in a cigar, man. So, like Izzy said, the beginner to the seasoned smoker, you're gonna be happy. The flavors are there.
Absolutely. You know, so thank you so much. Mark McLennan, congratulations. You are a winner, Six and Sips. Do you have a recipe book of all your drinks you do on here? If not, have you ever thought of doing one?
Yes, we have. Yes, we have. Yes, we have. In the works. It's in the works.
Stay tuned. Stay tuned. Thank you for that beautiful question. And my man Joey, we're working on this.
We're
We're gonna
working
come
on
out
it.
with something really awesome for all you guys to commemorate our last season, which we had an amazing time with everyone. And we're working on season two, Dylan. Working on season two.
Yeah.
So I promise I'll send you a signed copy, whether you want it or not. I'm sending it. All right, and last but not least, Brendan Macy, congratulations. What are the must-have bar tools, and which ones should I be the most picky about? Um, Man, great question. Because I did a shaken cocktail today, and I just had the last bits. So I would say, Joey, you've got a different shaker than me. Uh, Two-part shaker. Make sure you
I got
got
a three
something
part.
really nice. And now I've also got a Hawthorne strainer. All
Mine's
right.
got it built in.
So yeah, Joey's got his version. Those usually do about like one cocktail, maximum two.
True.
You might get away with making like maybe three. You
Yeah, I get
definitely
2 out of
want to
mine.
you definitely want to jigger 2 ounces, 1 ounce, and it's gradiated on the inside, or you have a gradient on the inside, so you can go like half ounce, 3/4 ounce, or 1.5 ounce on the inside. Um,
I always go
you,
2.
we know.
Two,
Uh,
two
More is
plus
better.
ounces.
you
More is
know,
better.
a bar spoon is pretty much what you would need, and and a mixing glass. But you could really get away with anything to be a mixing glass. You could actually take the bottom part of your shaker, and that could be your mixing glass. But a heavy bottom mixing glass makes a big difference. The last piece I would say is get yourself some quality ice.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cool stuff, and shout out to the entire crew out here in the global creative that keeps on using my clear ice that I lovingly make every week for the show. It's
Hey,
not
what's
for
the
your
recipe for
personal
that?
consumption.
What's the recipe for the clear ice?
Well, like there's a lot of clear ice guys, and they make some nice little things that you can get some clear ice.
Actually,
Clear ice, a
I
little
have
more
another.
solid.
There's
Yes.
one more piece, and it's the piece that I don't have in my bar. Every time I want to do a nice little garnish, like a lemon, edge. What's that thing called? What do you call that thing?
Okay, so I've got like this multi-tool which I use for lemons. So you can actually, it's like just like a lemon thing, but you can actually, it has a lemon grater where
Mm-hmm.
you can actually pull
You
like
can pull.
individual or
Yes.
one, or what's called a channel knife, and that's in there where you
Yes.
could pull a long strips, like if you were doing specific. And obviously, you have a knife if you want to do a lemon expression, but I use it for orange as well. So it works two ways. Works for a lemon and an orange as well. Where you could use it for your expressions, but a nice sharp knife or a really nice zester does the same trick.
Hey, Frank, send me
Awesome.
the link for that, man.
Yeah, I need that. Does it have Sticks and Sips branded on it?
Yes,
Do we,
we're
have
we're
that?
working on that right now. So listen, I believe we've gotten to the end of the show. Incredibly, it's flown by. I've had a lovely experience with Mezcal Vago, and I want to thank my guest Dylan Sloan from Mezcal Vago
Juice
for
to
this
do.
incredible journey. I'm gonna do a little mezcal for you.
Boom.
Salud, my brother.
Cheers,
Thank you.
guys. That was fun. It's good to meet you guys.
Same
It
here. I love
was-
the story. The story is amazing. I think that's what so many people that that smoke cigars or drink spirits. It's like we love the products, and then the story just reinforces that love even more. You're like, wow, that's a great story about friends who just kind of threw caution to the wind. And it's how we started at Drew Estate. People that had no business doing what we're doing. In a very traditional space, and that's a great story, and that lives on, and that empowers people. What me and my buddies have a crazy idea. Maybe it isn't so crazy. So it speaks to that. Hey man, take a shot, man. You don't know where it's going to end up. You might have some fun along the way, and that's the best part, man. Have some fun along the way. Mezcal Vago, love this stuff. Dynamite.
Yeah, follow your passion. Key.
Well, so next, I want to thank my man Willie for coming in, man. Great questions, by the way. I'd love to send you some swag, but corporate limitations have me bound up.
It's all good,
But
man.
but
I
I
got
love.
I got the best prize of all, man. I got the knowledge, man. I'm good.
There you go. There you go, man. And we could, literally we could talk for hours with Dylan and with you and Joey and Izzy and everybody out there just about fermentation, guys. I don't want to geek out about these things, but you're talking about, cellular breakdown based on temperature and humidity and all these things. And these are all wonderful things, man. And you know what? That means their conversation can go longer and further. So I'll
Yeah.
leave that for the next time. But I love the question, Willie. We have so much to talk about and so much to learn from you and from Dylan. and I want to thank you for that opportunity.
Thank
Izzy,
you for having me.
you know, I'm always honored by your smile on this show.
You know, Frank, you're my
You know what you do? You're like that beautiful part of the cocktail, you know, that makes the cocktail bloom. You know, you cut the ugly on here because man, it's pretty bad. You know,
I
but
work with best people. I work with the best people. So thanks again for having me, Frank and Dylan. This is beautiful. Again, from a bourbon drinker, I'm like, whoa, this is everything. So thank you.
Another convert. Thank you.
there you go. There you go. Listen, we're growing the mezcal world. Everybody out there, listen. We've been on about 44 episodes of Sticks and Sips, give or take, in a row here, and we've always had a mezcal minute. And people have always asked us about, you know, what is this mezcal business? We don't know what the you're talking about, and you know, and they want to know, you know, and I'm honored, you know, along with Joey, to introduce people to something new
Thank
and something that they appreciate.
Yeah.
And by the way, we have a group trip to Oaxaca.
Oh,
We'd
yeah.
love to have you lead us.
I was wondering
You know,
if that was gonna come up. Yeah.
Oh,
listen,
yeah.
listen. COVID like messed us up, but not forever.
The bus is just getting more packed as we keep talking about it.
You let me know, man. We'll take care of you. Hopefully, I
All
can
right.
get
Well,
down.
you gotta get ready for a group of like, you know, about 40 something people right now, because we
I'm
picked
in.
about every
I
bus
want to drink.
every week we've picked up another convert, you know, over the 40 something weeks. So we got like 40. What, man? Listen, we'll trade it off. We'll take you to Cigar Safari. How about that?
Yeah.
So you
There
can
you
visit
go.
our factory in Nicaragua. How about
Yeah,
that?
and you guys can go surfing in Nicaragua too. There's some good surf down there too. We'll trade. We'll do a big surfing in cigars and mezcal trip.
You could surf on the lake, the only freshwater lake that has sharks. Enjoy.
Yes,
So
thank you.
listen, guys, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. What a great episode. I want to thank my man Jack, who made this you know, this broadcast possible. So, you know,
What did he do?
congratulations.
What
You
did
know,
he do? He
he
sets
hit
it and
record.
forgets.
He
Oh,
hit
okay.
record, you know, and he didn't even throw up any of the slides, but I was so involved and engrossed that it didn't matter. So but with that, I want to say, listen, next week, ladies of the Liga, we'll be enjoying a little Widow Jane. So shout out to Samson Surrey, and shout out
Yeah.
to you know, to the beautiful people out there, that you know, and you know, few that made this happen, you know, and put this in contact with all you guys. You know, super honored. So we'll be enjoying a little Widow Jane. We talking to the ladies of the Liga. And I think we'll be smoking some Sweet Janes. You know, I think it's going to be a fun evening. So if you want to hear from the beautiful ladies of Drew Estate, tune in next week. And with that, I'm going to finish my mezcal. You finish your drink. Tune in next week, 7 p.m. See you guys. Salute.
Good riddance.